Hello and welcome to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin as well as other macro charts and indicators. And starting off with fear and greed, we can see Bitcoin still hanging out in greed territory. You can see it's kind of been chopping up and down for the last month or so. Zooming out, you can see that this whole range of greed has really started since the dip that we had in April. After that massive dip, we've just kind of hung up here at the higher end of greed and neutrality. Bitcoin waiting to get into those all-time high territories. I'm going to get into the charts. We've kind of seen this song and dance before. We'll see if we can kind of gain a feel for what moves are going to happen next, because Bitcoin Total3, we are at some key resistance levels, and I have no doubt if we see Bitcoin going into new all-time highs, we'll see extreme greed return as well. Something to keep in mind is that overall, the summer, not so great. But out of the summer months, July is the best. We are getting into July. June is the weakest of the positive summer months. And as you can see, August and September, but aren't so great. But, this is just an almanac perspective. Doesn't mean that we can't have great August and we have before. And we've also been talking about a lot how in the years where we get our Bitcoin cycle tops, that the summers overall, except for September, of course, but the summers overall tend to not be that bad. You can see last cycle, 2020, we did have that top in 21, alt season right here in April, and the summer overall was a net positive. So we're waiting to see what that'll look like. Let's actually just go to June and take a look here. We'll try to measure it out. Find the first day in June, which was, and we are looking at the Heikinashi candle here. So we'll just measure from the middle here. And so far, I'm just measuring by where this is showing June started. So far, we're showing a 3.5% gain. I know it's going to look differently on this monthly chart, but overall, it's not too bad. And something else to keep in mind, we're going to be talking about this a little bit in the video today. I'm going to keep harping on this because for any of you new to crypto, you probably, maybe this isn't glued into your head, that we do not get that massive alt season that everyone talks about and dreams about until Bitcoin tops. Once Bitcoin tops, then many of the best altcoins, the money rotates into them. Bitcoin becomes too expensive to buy. Altcoins are very cheap, and it only takes, I was going to say a little bit of money, but little in comparison from Bitcoin to some of these alts. Only takes a small percent of a rotation to make some of these just pop off. So do keep that in the back of your mind, is that, this is what we're looking for at the end of the cycle. And I think there's more similarities between this cycle and the 2017 one than I do this one and the last one. I think that's what's thrown off a lot of people. Something else to keep in mind is the old chart, but the point still stands that on the way to the top, even very close to the top, we can get decent pullbacks. So once we see that top in Bitcoin, you'll know because there's a divergence between Bitcoin and the alt pairings. Speaking of which, Bitcoin doing much stronger compared to alts. Now, Bitcoin and alts are at some key resistance. We'll get into what that looks like on the charts here in a minute. And as far as this logarithmic, which means factors of 10, regression chart, we can see that Bitcoin is just hanging out in this yellow band. The yellow band, at least for early July, shows 100 to 130K. So if we say in the yellow band, 100 to 130K, you can see where the light green band is below that, practically 78 to 100K, and the orange band, 130 to 170K. And we've been talking about how whenever Bitcoin decides to break through some of these key resistance levels and make its way up, I am waiting for about that 150K area to be hit next. Now on my channel, I talk about Bitcoin mining stocks, which we've discovered top with Bitcoin, and I also do altcoin analysis. I even talk about the stock market a little bit because that also, of course, affects the crypto world. So getting into Bitcoin right here, a couple things going on. We are in this channel, and right now we'll see sooner or later, are we going to break through this channel? You'll see, before it wasn't a channel because we had these higher lows that broke down. But whenever your higher lows break down, it can be a channel, or higher high. It can be an ascending channel too. Had a nice bounce off that 100-day moving average. Now is about the area where we might see it break through. And if it does, it's something to watch for. Zooming out is we're watching for sort of this inverse head and shoulders pattern. Any of these factors I talk about, channels, the moving averages, resistance lines, every single data point or every single indicator to me is just a data point. And I want to see, which ones are agreeing with each other. Might we get something of a tell here? I would say with the fear and greed, possibly doing these lower lows that, maybe could we get, my gut tells me, and I'm retail, so probably wrong, but my gut tells me that, maybe we get another rejection, then bounce, and then boom, we go up in July. But if we do go up, we do have this possible inverse head and shoulders pattern. And something that we've been looking at for a while here is, I'll try to draw that exact from the last cycle high to low. If we take a look at that, this is how you can look for price targets, by the way. If you ever have a massive macro high to low, draw a fib, high to the next low, take it off log, and you can see we were hanging around the 1618, the 2618 area, at 155K area. And so, I've long said on this channel, I believe the topping area will probably be between the 2618 and 3618. How we've had the log regression on the charts. Similarly, on these charts, each cycle we hit lower fib levels. It shows that log regression as well. Last cycle, Bitcoin got up in this area. I think at best this cycle we can get up here. And if we add in a couple other indicators, by the way, let's go over to the weekly. And I'll show you how, these fibs real quick can show good support or resistance. You can see here the fib, even though we were making these new all-time highs, look where the candle bodies were. We didn't get candle bodies above it, came back down. There were some moving averages there. I think the 50 average, it bounced off. And now that fib, that 1618, is now support. So what was resistance is now support. That is a good thing. Similarly in March, even though they're new all-time highs, that's why we had that bit of a fake out. We ran into it about 3 times. Okay, 1, 2. On the third time we got through, over here it was pretty much on the 4th time we got through. That advertisement just loves me. And here, 3rd, 4th time, maybe that's going to be the secret sauce this time around. So, we do have this fib target. We also have a couple other things to look for. Of course, our log regression, as we're talking with the rainbow chart, and that's where the tops have been in the past. So you can see right there, log regression puts us in that 150K, 200K area, especially if you go out something like a 4-year cycle. We might be looking closer to 200K. And for any of you who have pointed out this indicator before, I think this is good to pay attention to. The pi cycle high-low. Now, we've had the pi cycle trigger last couple cycles. Last one, it barely triggered, so I do not expect it to trigger this time, where the lower moving average gets above the top one. But the upper moving average, even just hitting that, right now it's at 170K. So I know it seems unbelievable, but I've been in this crypto world since 2017, and I've seen unbelievable things last 2 cycles. So when we do get into that euphoric phase, you will see big moves happen very quick, and I think there's a lot to show us that those would be good topping areas. So that's, bullish perspective, for the macro term. Actually, we have a green weekly candle here. I'm curious. Let's put on our buy sell signal on the weekly. This is a good sign. on the weekly, this is a good sign that we have a buy signal. We finally got one coming through. So, maybe that'll be the strength we need to get through and get to that next resistance area for that inverse head and shoulders. Yeah, so that is a good indicator to be seen. We've also been talking about how with the stochastic, this has been one of our favorite indicators, that, weekly, a little cautious here because it could roll over. Doesn't mean price has to go way down. Sometimes it just stays flat as it resets. But on the monthly, the stochastic is getting ready to rip. And I'd be banking more on whatever the more macro uh, indicators are. Those I think have a lot more truth and strength behind them. So that's a good one. Let's take a quick look at our MACD, and we'll get through some of these other charts as well. MACD, I've been talking about this, how back here when we had the ETF approval, we sort of had this double hump. Now, price went up a bit. Here we had a positive MACD turn, and disappointing. I was pretty excited about this. Any subscribers, you remember me, I said, hey, it's flipping positive. But we've just been going sideways. So if we do get one of those double humps, there is room to run. And, maybe we see that summer 150K move. And then, quarter four, 4 year cycle, 200K move, and that's where the top is. That kind of seems to me like the most likely scenario, or one that seems more and more plausible. Let's go over to the daily quick. If we do get a rejection down, by the way, just some bearish areas to look for. The 50-day moving average that has held up a couple times, that is at 104K. We also had the 100 moving average get tagged lower into the channel. And this blue line, if you remember, that's the macro 1618 we're staying above. So, at worst, if we did get a rejection, I'd be watching for that 101, 102K area. Let's go over to Bitcoin dominance. This thing still remains very bullish, of course. And, something we talked about last week on this channel. I think, I was hoping we could possibly see a top here because we had that big spike, and there is some good confluence back here in the past. You can see levels that we were hitting, getting support resistance off of, but Bitcoin dominance still bullish going through that. The area I'm now looking for, and Bitcoin dominance tagged it before it rotated over in 2017. It tagged it twice last cycle, and I think this is the area to watch for yet again, because it is the one constant through all these cycles where we've had alt season is this 71, 72% area. Last cycle it ticked up, close to 74. So, let's just say 71 to 74% would be my next major area for a possible top as far as Bitcoin dominance. And, we were talking about, just to drive this home here, we were talking about that rotation with Bitcoin. And if we overlay Bitcoin with Bitcoin dominance, there will be a little bit going on here, but bear with me, please. So here was that double top. As you can see from last cycle, look where Bitcoin topped. Okay, there is still a massive rotation after the top, even with the top. Right down here. As it was topping, you can see there's a massive rotation. Here was 2017. Where did Bitcoin top? Right here. Now, Bitcoin dominance, it was just kind of almost revisiting its lows it had before, and a massive rotation. So again, after Bitcoin tops, there's money from Bitcoin rotating over. 65.5% of money is in Bitcoin now. When that rotation has happened in the past, we have gotten down to about that 40% area. Let me take that off here. So the 40% area, if you take a look at this in two ways. One, you could take a look at it as a horizontal trend line right here from these bottoms. That would, I think, be even better for this cycle. We'd see rotation to the high 30s, low 40%. But if you take a look at it as an ascending trend line, you could also look for a low 40s. So in the grand scheme of things, when it comes down that big, it doesn't really matter too much. Even this little rotation right here, it was huge for alts at the time, last end of last year. So, and there was another one before, I want to say, back in 2024, somewhere in here, where there is huge moves. And so it doesn't, on the chart, you almost don't even notice it. But when we do see it on the charts, it is massive. And if you're getting it now into the right crypto assets, you're way ahead of 95% of retail. Retail's not in the market right now. Most retail, your friends, your family, your coworkers, they will be getting into the market when it is here. And it is just straight up gambling, and they're going to be left holding their bags for 4 years. Okay. Most retail, they are getting in somewhere around here. So if you believe in your crypto asset, if you think it is a strong one, again, it can do anywhere, probably, a 2x for the top altcoins to, something like a 10x, 20x if you get lucky with some of the lower caps. Let's go over to Total3. Total3, we can see, this is a good chart to look at once in a while, that this one, it's encountering a little bit of resistance. It has that 786 here, but we do see these lower highs, lower lows, almost as if, we have a channel going there. Let's go over to the daily. So the daily, you can see a lot of resistance there for Total3. If we were to draw a channel here, let's just see how much this lines up. That, something to watch for, that it could break above here, maybe minor FACO territory. But again, I'd say Bitcoin, it's at the top of its channel. Total3, a lot of resistance right here with the moving averages and even the top of the channel not too far away. I'm almost getting the feeling, again, like we might see a little bit of a correction, even though we have a buy signal, that maybe we get a little bit of a correction, then breakthrough. Yeah, but, inversely, who knows? Maybe now's the time where we just rip up, probably because, I have so much PTSD from this market cycle, and I'm expecting it to go down. So, maybe this is the time it just goes up and it says, psych. But overall, just going back to Bitcoin quick, we've seen this. We've seen these long phases where we get a big move up and we get a descending channel down for a while. Big move up, downward for a while, descending channel, big move up. As the cycles increase, I think the time of these moves will get shorter, granted. But my gut says we haven't had the total amount of time yet. Again, we'll see. As far as others divided by Bitcoin, this is one of our altcoin indicators. There still is a bit of room down to go. So what others is the total market cap of all altcoins outside the top 10. So if you add all the market cap underneath Cardano, you add all of it together, that takes up, as of now, 11% of the total crypto space, and we might see that get as low as 9%. But something to keep in mind, we talked about the differences in cycles. Look at last cycle, how from that bottom in 2019, this had a steady move, big flush, and then this V recovery in 2021, where alt season concluded right here. In 2017, not so much. It was coming down for a bit, and all of a sudden, it just rocketed up in a matter of a month. And I think as we're getting closer to the end, we're probably getting closer to one of these kind of scenarios, because this one played out for a while. And if we were going to see, something similar to 2020, 21 play out for a while, we're talking about the top not being until 2028, something crazy like that, 2029. So, hopefully that's not the case. That'd be most bearish scenario if we were replaying something like this at a much more massive, large scale. So I'm still on the 2017 comparison train. And another reason for that is, here on Tether dominance, almost 5% of all money in crypto is in Tether. Tether is a stable coin. It has a value of $1. Let's go over to Tether. Always has a value of $1, $158 billion in the Tether market cap. And, you can see here that, encountering some resistance, coming down, as I was saying, maybe Bitcoin is going to get rejected, but if Tether stays red here, that's positive for Bitcoin. So if it stays red here and starts to come down to these levels, you're going to see Bitcoin have a big move. So could Tether dominance be showing us that we could break out soon? We'll see. That's something to watch for. Taking a quick look at Ethereum. Ethereum right here at some resistance. So this has been resistance for a bit now on the weekly. Let's fix it. There we go. We have the 50 on top of the 100, and Ethereum's also above its macro. We have to fix our fib. It's off log scale. Let's put it on. There we go. It's also above its 20-week moving average and 200-week moving average. Here it's under the 618. So, it's being coiled up in here, getting ready to make a big move one way or the other. Something to watch for as far as Ethereum. And there was another chart. I'm trying to remember what it was. I wanted to finish with this. I saw it on Twitter, or X, as it's called nowadays, and it was a bunch of dominance, Bitcoin dominance, Ethereum dominance added together. I wish I could give credit to whoever put it out, but someone, I believe this was it. Yes, because I was looking at this before. I saw this chart on Twitter X. If you know who put it out, or if I find out, I'll pin them for credit in the comments below. But they talked about how you add in all the dominance of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tether, that we get a chart that looks like this. Now, what's cool about a chart like this is you can see where the big moves are about to happen. So December 2020, when it was topping, here is when it came to alt season. Where's December? Yeah, here we go. December 2017, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just fell off a cliff here. And so, we're showing that we're still at the top here. We are at the opposite end of what would be considered alt season. Now, I was playing around with this fib when I first discovered this type of chart and was looking, where we were getting some fib reaction. So I just drew it to a top somewhere in the middle here. I did low to high, so I went to the highs that are over here right now. Of course, it's probably going to go higher, or definitely could get up to one of these areas. But I was just seeing, where could we see an alt season? Alt season 2017 the dominance got all the way up here when you added up. Last time it got down here, is dominance, only going to get to, one of these levels right here, the 382 or so, something to watch for. Here was at the end of last year. Again, that wasn't much of an alt season rotation. So if all of a sudden you're seeing, this chart, I'm going to try to keep track of it for you guys once in a while. But if all of a sudden you see this massive rotation and it's getting down to the 0.5, or 3.2 to 0.5, that might be another signal that we are getting that alt season rotation. But again, that doesn't happen until the very end. So, I don't think a move's imminent, but I do think overall this chart does a good job at showing where there could be a rotation. And this is why people are getting frustrated with their alts, is that you see the levels we're at. So once this rotates, people will be very happy with their altcoins. And in my opinion, now's not the worst time to dollar cost average into some of these altcoins, because by the time we do rotate over, it's too late. So anyways, I think we'll leave it there for today's video. 25 minutes, not too bad. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you're watching today on Monday, June 30th, what do you think? Are you leaning towards breakout, or are you leaning towards, rolling over? I think, there was that macro buy signal on the weekly for Bitcoin, and there was the tether dominance showing, some resistance. So that would both point to a move up, or Are you kind of, this is the way I'm leaning, and I'm happy to be wrong, where, hey, we've seen this move before. Usually, it takes a little bit longer, and then we, come back, maybe one more time and then go up. Which way are you leaning right now? I think, money on the table. I'm sort of leaning towards one more minor pullback, but, we'll see. Again, happy to be wrong. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful Monday and rest of your week. Take care.